This video is brought to you by our own Meta. Thank you so much for donating. If you want to support Brackeys yourself, you can go to patreon.com/Brackeys.
Thanks for tuning in at Brackeys.
Hello everyone and welcome to this video on creating a tower defense game in Unity. Today we'll be adding currency to the game along with a cost for each turret, so we can't just build them infinitely. We'll also be tidying up how we build turrets in the build manager and how that is connected to each individual node. So we'll make it a bit safer and definitely easier to use. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. As you can see, I'm here in Unity, and what I really want to begin with is our shop. So over under canvas and then shop, we can see that we have this shop script that the two buttons are linked to, and they just call purchase standard turret and purchase missile launcher on that shop script. So let's double click that to open it up in Visual Studio, and here we can see what is actually happening. All we really do is we call set turret to build on the build manager, and then we pass in some prefab that is actually also sitting on the build manager. I think we should go ahead and clean this up quite a bit, because instead of setting the turret to build using some prefab that is located under the build manager, what I thought that we would do is create a separate class that has called something like turret blueprint, where we would have a prefab and then a cost. And then what we will do is we will simply set that on the build manager so that the build manager can then be responsible for subtracting that cost in our amount of money and actually building it using the prefab. So let's just go ahead and create this class right away. And this is just going to be a C# script, and we'll call this turret blueprint down here, and let's double click on that to open it up and just reload all here, and let's try that one more time. There we go. And we don't want this to be a mono behavior because we don't want it to be a component in Unity. We don't want to need to attach this to any game object, but we definitely do want to be able to see the fields here inside of the inspector. So therefore we are going to go ahead and mark this as system.serializable, and I will show you why we need to mark this in a second. All this really means is that Unity will go ahead and save and load the values inside of this class for us, and that means that they are visible in the inspector, and therefore we can edit them. So let's just go ahead and create a public variable here, and this is going to be a game object, and this is going to be the prefab of this turret. And then we'll also have a public integer storing the cost of this turret. And we can definitely add more things in here, but for now we'll just add these two values. Then what we can do inside of our shop is that we can now create a public variable, and as the type we'll now put in turret blueprint. So we just created a class here that we are now using as the type, and this is going to be our standard turret. And we'll also have a public turret blueprint for our missile launcher. There we go. And you can see that if I save this now and then head into Unity here and select our shop, we now have a standard turret. If we open that up, we have a prefab where of course we need to drag our standard turret prefab and a cost that we can just go ahead and set to something like 100. And we also have a missile launcher, and we need to drag that in as well. But I will just quickly show you what happens if I remove this system.serializable. Well, that means that Unity won't know how to serialize the data, meaning it won't know how to save the data, and therefore it doesn't know how to show it in the inspector either. So it doesn't show up there. So therefore we need to, every time we create a class that we want to show up in the inspector with multiple fields, we need to mark it as system.serializable. So we can see that it's back here, and we lost the information here. So we're going to set the cost of the first one to 100, the second one to maybe 250, and then we'll drag in the two prefabs here, the standard turret and our missile launcher. There we go. Cool. And now we can go ahead and utilize the fact that we have these two blueprints. So instead of calling everything on the build manager here, we can simply go ahead and remove all of this and maybe rename it a bit as well. So instead of having this the name of this method be purchase standard turret, we'll have it be select standard turret instead, because the transaction only happens when we actually place the turret, and therefore we aren't subtracting any money yet. So let's just call this the select standard turret and select missile launcher. And then we can go ahead and rename this as well. So we'll rename this to select turret to build, and we'll do the same down here. And we can go ahead and now remove these two, and then instead let's pass in the standard turret and the missile launcher. So now we need to go into our build manager, of course, and allow ourselves to do this, but you can see how this makes sense. We have a method that just tells the build manager to select the turret that we have up here. So now we can find our build manager, and we can go down here, and instead of having this set turret to build here, we'll create an entirely new function. And this will of course say public void, and we'll call it select turret to build. And it's going to take in a turret blueprint, which is just going to be the turret here. You could also call that turret blueprint if you want. And then our turret to build currently has the type of game object. Let's go ahead and change that to a turret blueprint as well. So that is as well aware of both the prefab and the cost. And so now we can just say turret to build equals the turret blueprint that was passed in to the select turret build function. Cool. So that will change that correctly. And now what we can do is we can go ahead and have a look at how we actually purchase or actually place down these turrets. So if we go into our node script, and remember this sits on every single node, and a node means a buildable place, means a platform that we can build something on top of. You can see here that if we get a mouse down, it's going to get the turret to build, and it's going to build it right in here. And I thought it would be a lot cleaner to have the build manager actually do the building of the turret. So let's separate this code out. And let's do that by first getting rid of the get turret to build method. So inside of our build manager here, what we are going to do is we are simply going to remove this method entirely. And we still need some kind of way to check if we have a turret selected. So previously we would say if build manager.get turret to build was equal to null, then we didn't want to highlight the node when hovering over it, and we didn't want to be able to build anything, of course, because we can't build null. But instead what we'll do is we'll go into the build manager here and create a nifty little use a nifty little trick here where we type in public, and then we are going to do bool can build like that, and then we open up and close these curly brackets. We type in get return, and then we do turret to build is not equal to null. And then remember to close that off with a semicolon. So this syntax might be really new to you, or it might just be trivial. I will try and explain what we're doing here. This is called a property. And it's called a property because we only allow it to actually get something. We only allow ourselves to get something from this variable. This variable can never be set. And it's pretty much the equivalent of writing a small function that will just check if turret to build is equal to null, and then or is not equal to null, and then return the result. So what we're really doing is we are saying that we want a public bool variable called can't build, and when we try to use that, say if we can't build, then it's simply going to check if turret to build is not equal to null. And if it isn't equal to null, it's going to return true, so we can build, and else it's going to return false, so we can't build. So that is the idea with this property, but you could also make this as a function as well. So in here, we can now just write if build manager.can build. And it was that easy. So that just makes more sense syntax wise. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing up here. So build manager.can build, and then we will return if we can't. So let's just put an exclamation mark in front of those two. Of course, if we can build, we want to proceed down here. All right, so I think we are getting there slowly. So now we can take all of this code here and let's move that into the build manager. So let's instead make a function on the build manager called something like build turret let's just say build turret on, and then we'll pass in this node. So if we go into our build manager here, let's create a function, and this is going to be a public void build turret on. And the reason why I'm saying on is we want to build it on a particular node, and we'll have that passed in as an argument here. So we'll have the node passed in. And what we can do here, actually, I'll just write all of this code here once again so we make sure we don't make any errors. So we want to instantiate our turret to build dot prefab. So that's the current turret that we have selected. We want it to be instantiated at node.transform.position. So the node that we have specified, this is where we want to build the turret. We want to use the position of that node. And we want to add onto that node dot and I think it's offset, position offset. There we go. So we want to add that value onto that, or we could simply go into the node here and create a little helper function, which I definitely think that we should do. And this is just going to be a public vector3, and we'll call this get build position. And this is just going to return transform.position plus our position offset. So now in here, instead of doing all of this, we can simply say node.getBuildPosition. There we go. And finally, we want a rotation, and we're just going to use quaternion.identity. So we won't rotate it at all. And what we can now do is we can do GameObject and store this in a temporary variable. We'll just call that one turret. And we'll cast it as a game object as well. Remember, we've done this before. We've cast it into a game object and called it turret. And now we can simply say node.turret, except we need to go into the node here and we need to change this to public. And this actually makes a lot of sense for us because you might want to have some nodes with a turret already placed when you start the game. Some levels you might want to restrict the user or help the user depending on what you choose to have built on top of that turret. So what we'll do in here is we'll just mark this and just put a disclaimer here inside of the editor that we will just saying optional. So this is just an optional parameter, and that just means that if we go into Unity now and I think we might have to just wait until we finish it all here. So we'll just wait a second here. So we'll say node.turret. We are now able to do that equals the turret that we just built. And I believe that is all. So now we are actually ready to do some currency, but let's just see if this is working. So we should see this error disappear here. And now if we select a node here, you will see that we are able to optionally put a turret in here. So it just says optional. And that is really the only function that this has here. The header only displays a bit of text here in the editor to help ourselves, but it is definitely usable, especially because if you just see this game object and you haven't put optional here, it looks scary. It looks like something should definitely be there. Cool, so everything should be working now, and we should hit play, and we should be able to select the turret, except we can't, and that's because we've lost the connection of these buttons. So we need to select standard turret item, and we need to go shop, and then instead of purchase standard turret, it is now select standard turret, and the missile launcher as well. So we'll go shop, and then select missile launcher. Cool, so now we should be able to hit play, and select the turret and place it around and do the same with the missile launcher. Okay, so that's awesome. And if we go into the code here, I just want to walk you through what is happening. So inside of our shop, these methods are called when we click something, and they call a method on the build manager called select turret to build, and then we pass in the turret that we want to build. In our case, either the standard turret or the missile launcher, which are defined by these turret blueprints, which is basically just a prefab and a cost. And then we go into the build manager here. So this is the function that is called, and it just sets the turret to build here, which is a private variable, a private turret blueprint equal to that turret that we passed in. And then later, when we want to actually build it, when we want to place it, that happens on the node. Whenever we click the node, it's going to say if everything is okay, of course, if we can build and all that, then it's going to call build turret on that node on the build manager. So it just passes itself onto the build manager that then builds the turret to build on top of that node with the correct position and all of that, and make sure to set node.turret equal to that turret so the node itself is aware of what turret is on top of it. And if we go in here and hit play, and I will show this here, and I will just hit escape here and find a node here. Let's just find let's say use the third one from the left here. If we go and place a node or a turret on top of that, you can see that the optional turret here now says standard turret, and that is, if we click on it, a reference to that specific turret here. So it's a reference to that turret that we can then do stuff with, such as maybe sell at a later point or upgrade or whatever you really want to do there. Cool. So I believe that was all of the changes to how we do this stuff that we needed to make, and now it's really easy to add the actual currency in here. So now we can just go on our game master here and add a component. You could put it onto the build manager. You could make a separate one called currency. I think I'm going to go ahead and make one called maybe player stats. And then we'll have stuff like currency in there, the money of course, and we'll have maybe the remaining lives left that the player has, and you can keep track of other stuff as well, the amount of damage the player has done, if you want the player to have a level or a base that you could upgrade or whatever related to the player. Any statistics here, we're going to put them in here. And now we can simply go public static int, and this is going to be our money. And then we'll go public integer, and this is going to be our start money. And again, remember, we make this a public integer because we want to edit this inside of the inspector, and we make this a public static integer because we want to this to be accessible with using only the player stats type without requiring an instance or a reference to any particular object in the scene. So public int start money, we'll just default that to something crazy like 400. We'll be able to afford a lot of turrets. And then we'll create a start method here. And when we start the game, we just want to set money equal to start money. And you might now say, why don't we just set money up here equal to 400 and then remove all of the other stuff? And the reason why is that static variables will carry on from one scene to another. So if you were to reload the scene and use that as a way to reset the game, money would, the amount of money that we have would carry over. And so if the player is broke, he will start off with no money left. So that is kind of important to do. Cool, so now we can set that in here. We have the start money in here, and that also makes it very easy to edit inside of the inspector doing it this way. And then we'll find our build manager, and under the build turret on, what we want to do here is we want to now check if player stats dot money is greater or is less than turret to build dot cost. So if we don't have enough money, what we want to do is we simply want to return, and then we might display something on the screen at a later point, but for now we'll just say not enough money or not enough gold, whatever you want to call it. Let's just say not enough money to build that. Cool. And if we do have enough money, we're just going to proceed down here. And in that case, we want to say player stats.money minus equals turret to build.cost, so that we remember to subtract the cost of our turret from our money amount. And what we will do here is we just want to say debug.log turret build money left, and just display our amount of money that we have left. So we're just going to go player stats.money. At a later point, maybe already in the next video, we are definitely going to display our amount of currency on the screen. But I have some different UI changes that I want to make, so I think I'm going to pack all of them into one video. I have some really cool ideas about how we can overlay the text here and make things look a bit better. And we might also want a price tag for the turrets down here as well. So if we now go in here and hit play, you can see we can't do anything until we click a turret here, and we're going to purchase it, and it says turret built, money left 300, and that is correct. 400 minus 100 is 300. And if we now build a missile launcher here, you can see missile launcher selected, turret built, money left 50. And now we can't actually go ahead and place anything because it says not enough money to build that. And one really cool thing that we could add at a later point is so that when you select a turret and hover over one of these nodes here, that it might show the turret that we want to build and maybe make that turret red if we don't have enough money to build it, or something like that. At least change the color of our hover over, or yeah, you get the idea. So that is definitely something that could be added in, and something that you might experiment with on your own. And until the next video, you can of course go ahead and add the currency on the UI here, just as we did with our timer up here. It shouldn't be very different. So that was basically all I wanted to show you in this video. I thought it's really exciting, and in the next one, again, I hope to do some UI. So without further ado, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much to all of the awesome Patreon supporters who donated in August, and a special thanks to Aaron Meta, Robert Roche, James Calhoun, Vixian P, and Andrew K.